Hello and welcome to ED Insight, where we get you a 360-degree view of the big picture in business and economy. I'm Sridhan Ramakrishnan. On the show today, can India really achieve its target of 20 gigawatt of solar power by 2022?
This year we think it will be 150 megawatts. Next year it will be 600-700 megawatts.
Why the future of hydropower in India is looking bleak.
The gestation period is much longer. There are huge technical uncertainties.
And how windmills are spinning a success story despite severe constraints.
Wind is currently economically viable. Solar requires a lot more government subsidy before it becomes viable.
A top story first. Last year, India was running an energy deficit of 10% after having produced 830 billion units of electricity. Over the next decade, the demand is expected to double, which means the deficit will almost certainly widen. To beat that, the government is aggressively pushing for alternative sources of energy, including solar, wind and hydropower. Let's start with solar power, where the government wants to add 20 gigawatt or 20,000 megawatt of power by 2022. Is that a realistic target at all? Lakshmi Subramanian finds out.
Imagine an India with uninterrupted power supply, with non-polluting energy resources made of fuel that costs nothing. On the face of it, the idea seems impossible. But it could turn into reality if the sun shines on India's solar energy sector. The country receives more than 5,000 trillion kilowatt per hour in the form of solar energy, which is far, far more than its energy consumption. India has an installed capacity of 9.84 megawatt, of which 8 megawatt is grid connected. But that's less than 0.1% of the total installed renewable energy in the country. More generating capacity is needed to effectively capitalize on the abundance of solar energy. And this is where the dream becomes a nightmare.
We are at the starting point of these large solar projects. And as you know, this is a high initial capital cost technology and venture. So therefore banks obviously have their risk perceptions, and there is not enough evidence in India of this having done successfully.
There is merit in believing that solar power generation is a risky proposition. Setting up a solar plant of 1 megawatt takes about 15 to 20 crore rupees. That's 3 times the capital required for a coal-based power plant. Currently, solar energy is manufactured in 2 ways. One, by using PV or photovoltaic, where solar cells convert sunlight to electricity, and 2, by using the sun's energy to heat water to produce steam, which in turn powers the turbine that produces electricity. World over, solar PV commands a majority share because it is easy to install. Solar PV can be made in 2 ways, thin film and crystalline silicon. Thin film has lower conversion but can generate electricity even in cloudy weather, and crystalline silicon has higher conversion rates and is therefore popular, but it is more expensive, which explains why solar power tariffs range between 13 and 18 rupees per unit compared to just 2 to 3 rupees for coal-based power.
In the case of photovoltaic, a tariff of 17.91 rupees, and in the case of solar thermal, 15.31 rupees per unit. You have to come down to a more acceptable level, and no amount of subsidy ultimately is going to help you do that. You have to make improvements in technology. You have to indigenize manufacture. You have to reduce manufacturing costs.
But then this has been a problem with solar power across the world, and that too for decades. According to Solar Buzz, retail prices of photovoltaic cells or solar batteries that generate power in the US have dropped by just $1 in the past decade.
Even in the West, there are hardly 2-3 global vendors which are focusing on research in specific technologies, whether it is concentrated solar, parabolic mirrors or towers, which means the research cost and hence the technology patent cost is significantly high. Also, economies of scale have not kicked in at all. It's only because of economies of scale it is expected that the cost is going to come down.
A lot of our raw materials we still import. So what's important is that if India is going to have a 5 to 7 gigawatt manufacturing base, that we are able to get the producers of the raw materials to produce in India. And that requires a certain amount of volume in India.
India's is confident about achieving those economies of scale, and not without reason. Big players like Tata Group, Reliance, Bharat Heavy Electricals and Punj Lloyd have made inroads in solar power. The government too is doing all it can to give the sector that extra spark. Today, India is the 7th largest solar PV producer and the 9th largest solar thermal power generator. And there's more to come. Since the announcement of the solar mission in January, the Ministry of Renewable Energy has received 2,000 applications for 5 megawatt solar power projects.
You see, the point here is, in the beginning, obviously it's expensive. As more industries will come in, the expenses will come down, and automatically this will taper down. The curve will come like this down.
But is that the right answer?
One of the very important underlying theme of the mission is that the prices have to come down. As of now, there is a heavy subsidy component, and the heavy subsidy component can never lead to a self-sustaining market. So if prices have to come down, then a lot of R&D has to go in, a lot of new technologies have to fall in place.
Here there's a lesson to be learned from Germany, which receives half the sunshine that India does, but has emerged as the world's largest solar power producer. A big reason for that is the fact that it encouraged R&D in technology. India needs to do the same if it wants to meet its ambitious solar power generation targets.
How can you make this ambitious target feasible? Whether we're going to do it 2020 or 2030 or 2040, it's a very good target to have. But now it's for the industry, it was the financial institutions, it was the youth, educational institutions like IITs and IIMs and etc. to actually take it as a challenge and do it.
Unfortunately, the innovation cycle in solar is not every 18 months, it's every 5 to 8 years. And so no matter what we do, I think that the structural supply chain in India of the semiconductor industry is not here. Neither do we have the intellectual capital to do thin film technology. We rely on third-party foreign technologies coming in.
Despite these hurdles, solar power is the best solution for India's acute power shortage. That's because solar energy can be produced in almost any region of India. But other forms of renewable energy like hydropower and wind energy are region-specific and are locked in structural issues like environment clearances and land acquisition. According to a research by Novonus Insights, this sector is expected to grow at 25% year-on-year for the next few years. The sector has already received committed investments of $7 billion from foreign and private investors. Another $15 to $20 billion could come in from these investors by 2012. The government is expected to spend close to $20 billion for solar energy over a 30-year period and spend an additional $1 billion on projects that includes installation of approximately 100 megawatt on public sector buildings and incentives and creation of industrial parks for PV manufacturing. With projections like these, it sure seems like there's a lot of steam in this sector.
But is there enough steam in hydro and wind power? We'll tell you in just a bit. Stay with us.
We have 150,000 megawatt of hydro potential. Of which only 26,000 megawatts is already used. But that doesn't mean we can use all 150,000.
The gestation period is much longer. There are huge technical uncertainties.
The upstream states may try, countries may try to divert the water. With the result, the projects which you have planned for the future may have some impact.